This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Today, and of course with our usual sense of democratic timelines, it's the morning here in the Beaver Valley, and I think it's also the morning in sunny Burlington. We have the voice of Respectonomics, Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, joined by my co-host, Sarah Benton. And I'll say
Good day, Jeremy.
It is good day, good morning. Here we go. And this morning we're going to be talking about hope. Hope is a very difficult word to talk about. It falls into the category of the necessities of human existence. We have already, as you know, in our previous podcasts, we have covered food and people and light. And now it's the turn to talk about hope, because human existence depends on hope. We will be moving to the last two categories for human existence are water and oxygen, and we'll be talking about those in future podcasts. But this one, as I say, is on the subject of hope. And hope, I think you'll agree, is an elusive subject. It's almost like you say, I hope, and you're not quite sure what you really mean. And yet you do know what you mean, but you can't really define it. So it's a little difficult to bring it all together, but I'm going to give it a shot. And Sarah, as always, I need your help.
Always here to help.
Okay, let's go for it. No, the first thing, though, I think about hope is, and I'm going to hijack, it was another author who said this, and I'm actually using different words, but hope is like a sixth sense, without which you cannot make a complete use of the other five.
Okay.
I think that's a very fair statement, that what we're really talking about is when I feel hopeless, what in fact happens is all of my other instincts, my character, my talents, my wisdom, and all those other things, they tend to fall by the wayside. So hope is not only in itself a beautiful characteristic, it's also an important denominator and an activator for all of what we are about. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, so if we've got that sort of in place, the next thing I want to sort of explore is this. We talk in Respectonomics, we talk endlessly, and for good reason. We talk about human dignity. And the dignity of the human being is largely embraced with hope. If you think of the human dignity, if it doesn't have hope, the dignity is for naught. So therefore, the whole concept of hope needs to be built into our self-dignity. But at the same time, we need to understand that a lot of people, I think I can add myself into the equation, there are times when you don't really feel very hopeful. And I think if I looked at the world today, the word you often hear, and you hear this often instead of younger people, I'm not sure why younger people particularly, but you hear this word hopeless. You hear it a lot. It's a hopeless condition in world politics or world something or other, but you hear the word hopeless. So
I think it revolves around, or there's a lot of the word exhaustion.
Yes.
Around that hopelessness.
Absolutely. Right? I forget, you would know this. You're a football person, aren't you?
I am.
Who was it, the famous coach, and maybe wasn't a football coach, who said, fatigue makes cowards of us all?
That I don't know.
Yeah, but it was a good one. So we've got two worthy statements so far. We've got, getting our senses together with hope, and now we've got this issue of fatigue. And it is one of the things about hope is it's the opposite or the antithesis. There's a big word for a morning chat, but it is the opposite, the paradox, if you will, to fear. And we experience fear. When we experience fear, now I'm not talking about fear of being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. I think if I saw a saber-toothed tiger coming my way, I would run very rapidly.
That's fight or flight, for sure.
I would be right in there.
And flight would be the option.
And it really would be, yeah. I'd probably call on you and say, Sarah, rescue me immediately. But the fear I'm really talking about are the fears that we encounter and experience, which quite frankly are learned fears. We learn them from our upbringing, from our environment, from our school days, from uh, the sort of, that are being just with other people. Do you remember when your parents would say to you, don't talk to strangers? S-
Right.
Sort of, it sets up this, well, if I don't know you, then I'm not allowed to engage in conversation. So
Right.
we've got these sort of, I call them irrational fears. I was told once they're not irrational. They are, what was it called? It was called emotionally logical.
Mm.
And maybe they are, but I'm going to call them irrational because I'm in an aggressive mood.
Okay.
If you're okay with that, you can calm me down. Try it. Hmm?
No, I think I'd like to let you go.
Okay, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Irrational fears. There are four of them. There's the fear of rejection. There's the fear of success, which is one of the
Mhm.
most complicated ones.
That's a huge one.
What's that?
I
It's
said that's a huge one.
it is. And so we got fear of rejection, fear of success, fear of failure, and fear of looking foolish.
Mm.
And most of us, quite candidly, can take all of those and almost relate them to school days, to
Mhm.
days when we were in the sort of much younger. Give you an example. If you say to somebody, "What kind of student are you? What's your academic standing?" People will come back with, "I'm an A minus, I'm a B plus, I'm an F," whatever it is. Do you realize that a lot of those grades that we just said I am, those grades were established in your life 50 years ago, and yet you're
Right.
holding on to them. So if you hold on to your grades, I suspect you're holding on to a lot of other guff as well. So one of the things we
Right.
want to
Right.
do in Respectonomics is to understand that hope is very important to rebuilding our dignity. It also is a way of understanding. And I think awareness is hugely important here, that we need to be
Mm.
hopeful. Now, I want to be very clear on one thing, Sarah. I don't like the word hopeful in the sense that you say something and somebody will reply, oh, well, hopefully something or other. That's a throwaway line. That does not come down to or embrace the true nature of hope. The true nature of hope is something that you have a faith or a trust or not necessarily an expectation. As a matter of fact, it's not an expectation by definition, but it does deal with faith and trust. So if we could look at this in a little more detail, are you with me so far on this?
I'm with you. So,
Okay, because the next stepping stone is that we need to practice being hopeful or having hope. And let me explain. We live in a world today where everything is incredibly instant. I mean, in the old days, you'd have to light the fire to get your coffee brewing in the morning. Now you go into your latest whoever makes it, espresso machine and so on. And, you turn on the taps and you get into your car and off it goes. You don't really think about a lot of these things. They're instantaneous. And I mean, that's part of modern civilization. But the
right.
snag is with all of those things, they become almost an area of complacency. Of course, the tap's going to
Hmm.
work. Of course, my coffee's going to be ready. Of course, of course, of course. So we actually lose practice with hoping. And one of the exercises that's quite helpful, and it sounds almost trite, but is actually to look at your body because Respectonomics is very emphatic on dividing out or allocating body, mind, and I say spirit, you say soul, someone else says
Right.
character. But whatever it is, body, mind, spirit, we are very big on identifying how each of these dovetails with, in this case, hope. And if you think about it, when I pick up a cup of coffee, it would be kind of fun to think to myself, I hope my hand will reach for the cup of coffee. I hope my hand will hold on to the cup of coffee without spilling it. And I hope my hand will be able to deliver the coffee safely to my mouth. I mean, it sounds almost like you're analyzing yourself into sort of idiot degrees. But really, what you're doing,
Right.
you're projecting a sense of hope and then a sense of success and achievement. And if we put hope in something that then is actually achieved, when we find an aspiration that is achieved, in this case, we're talking about my hand reaching for the cup of coffee, that in itself sets up within ourselves a sense of hope, a sense of reward, and a sense of not expectation, but a sense of actually enjoyment. It's rather nice to think, my goodness, my hand works.
Mhm. So with sort of this sense of hopelessness that
Hmm.
people are feeling
Right.
or are experiencing, what are some of the action steps that bring you back into
Yeah.
the hope arena, the
Yeah.
hope
Now,
space?
what you've done is you have said classically, as you know, one of the key members of our Dignity Trust. And for those listening, the Dignity Trust is the group that is the team behind us, is behind the organization, where we are exchanging ideas continuously. Actually, that's not true. Continually. That's a better word. But anyway, we do exchange ideas. And one of the things that's very important about the Dignity Trust is there's no pride of authorship. So when we're exchanging ideas, we are looking for the best result. And one of the pieces that's come to the table many a time from one individual is whatever we're talking about, whether it's hope, whether it's water, whether it's faith, what doesn't matter which one it is. The key is what are the next steps? In other words, we're very good humanly, we're very good at saying, well, here are the issues. That's not good enough. We may have identified the issues, but now we have to be able to confront them.
Right.
And
What's our
frankly,
action plan? Mhm.
exactly, and therefore to resolve them. So, one of the things I'm going to say before I answer your question, if I may, please, is to explain that one of the problems with hope today is we confuse it with a sense of entitlement and sense of expectation.
Mm.
So if I feel entitled, I don't have any hope. I just put my fist down on the table and say, I am entitled to whatever. And instead of being able to be more gracious and be able to say, I hope I will get that cup of coffee. I hope my car will start in the morning. I hope I will get to work safely. I hope I'll have a safe trip on the subway. Whatever it is I'm doing, we need to move ourselves away literally from that sense of entitlement. That is a personal decision. It doesn't answer your question. It is, though, a stepping stone in your question that, first of all, understand the fears that hold us back from hoping. Secondly, understand that entitlement is the wrong way of looking at our lives because it takes away the practice of hope. And thirdly, let's get into the practice of hoping. So we've talked about that already, but now let me be more concrete again. If I'm going to practice having hope, then let's talk about some of the ways I can actually do that.
Right.
One of the ways to do it is to express gratitude. When I say to you, thank you, Sarah, for joining me this morning, that is not an idle statement. That is a sense of appreciation. It is knowing that you've stepped out of your busy day to be with Respectonomics, with the podcast, to bring it to people. Expressing gratitude is a way of taking ourselves out of ourselves. And when you take yourself out of yourself, that in fact is emblematic, symbolic of hope. Hope is, by definition, is something outside of your, what would you call it, control.
Mhm.
Can't control hope by definition. If you
Right.
think you can, you're now into expectation and you're into entitlement and all those nasties. So being grateful, expressing gratitude. And by the way, what's the word? Metabolically, when you express gratitude, it actually changes the chemical composition of your brain, which gives it a sense of enjoyment and satisfaction. So that
Right.
alone, I mean, if you think about it, being grateful is a pretty straightforward way to obviate, to get around the fears that we've talked about and to get away from the sort of the dullness of life. Looking to say thank you is a very powerful technique. So gratitude is one of them. Satisfaction, you know, we say thank you for the cup of coffee. But you know what's nice to be able to say to oneself? My, that was a wonderful cup of coffee. My, that was a wonderful plate of pasta. Whatever it would be, my, that was a lovely drive. But to express satisfaction isn't the
Mhm.
same as expressing gratitude, but it is saying, yes, I'm satisfied. Because being satisfied, in fact, creates the most wonderful platform for hope. If I'm satisfied, I can hope. I don't get into this fantasy world of saying, I hope I'll be a trillionaire tomorrow morning. I can say, I'm very satisfied. I've said this before. Horace, the Latin poet, you know, your favorite. he,
Yes.
yeah, I know, but he said, "Sonavi apud meum," which means I had supper at my table. Meaning, in other words, very, very straightforward values are in fact very satisfying. And all I'm pointing to is understanding the gratitude and then understanding the satisfaction and saying, yeah, I am satisfied. And getting away from this awful why I have to climb the ladder, why I have to be promoted, why I have to be bigger and better. The next thing is small groups. Small groups, which we're going to be talking about in a separate podcast, but small groups are a very, very powerful technique of being able to express your fears and your concerns one to another, but most importantly, being able to build each other up. And when you build each other up, again, you're creating a platform for hope. You get a sense of, hey, this is worthwhile. If it's worthwhile, it falls into the bracket of hope. So I think, therefore, if we look at this, from those points of view, those are the mechanical details. The last
Mhm.
thing I want to say, Sarah, is if you're looking at yourself physically, like Jeremy looks at Jeremy, Sarah looks at Sarah, and listeners look at themselves, everybody should remember to use your word. We are triads. We are a triad of a body and a mind, and I'm going to say soul, and let everybody use their own word. Body.
Right.
But what I want to point out is this. We know that our effectiveness and our productivity and our enjoyment of life is at its optimum when those three are conjuncted together. When
Mm.
my body and mind and soul are operating together in harmony, that is when I, humanly, at my very best, it's actually when I've reached my potential.
Right.
So we're always looking to close the gap between what we are doing and what we're capable of doing. And one of the techniques is to look at hope, which is one of the most incredibly powerful tools in our own toolbox, and to look at it in relation to the body, which we've just done. And that is when we say, I hope my hand will work, I hope my shoulders will work, I hope my um, eyesight will work, but you think of all your senses and you just say, I hope they work, and bingo, they do. That is very satisfying. Hope in your mind is a way of intellectually looking at the things that have happened in the past. And I want to bring you one Churchillian statement or Churchillian quotation. Churchill said, he was talking about the old man who was on his deathbed, and the old man said, I've had many troubles in my life, but none of them happened.
Mm.
So, in other words, we can get really caught up in all the awfulness of life, which doesn't happen. So, we
Right.
have an absolute built in right to be hopeful. It's authentic and it's verifiable. Because if you look over your life and you think of all the times you were worried when you were a child, you were worried when you were an adolescent, you were worried this way, that way, and every other way. And yet those things never happened. So, we should embrace that today. They
Right.
didn't happen, and therefore we have a right to be hopeful. The last one is this. This gets a little complicated. And that is, if we look at our soul, everybody looks at their own life with the sense of that inner being. Everybody's got one, and you can call it whatever you like. But I
Right.
know one thing about the inner being. Everybody thinks that it will be eternal. Everybody thinks that it will last forever. I believe the figure is 8% of the population is existential and says, when you snuff it, and there's nothing left. That means 92% of the population says, when I snuff, when I shuffle off this mortal coil, something is going to go on living forever. It might be a memory to the world. It might be a legacy. It might be, who knows what it, we don't have to get into that. But can you imagine when we talk about that sense of the everlasting, the eternal, whatever you want to call it, when you do that, you're actually embracing hopefulness. You're
Mm.
embracing hope by definition. And if
Right.
not embracing hope, now is a very good time to look at the body, the mind, and the spirit and apply hope to all three. Because when we do that, we produce a harmony of self that has all of the makings to be effective, to be powerful, productive, innovative, and frankly, to have a lot of fun.
I like it.
I rest my case.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sarah.